Welcome everyone to the Georgia Virtual College Fair. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your cameras and your microphones are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. So get comfortable and enjoy all the information you're going to be hearing over the next 45 minutes or so. This is just one of many different sessions happening. Be sure to sign up for additional sessions where you signed up for this one. And this presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website where you registered. That's all the administrative stuff I have, so I will get out of the way and turn it over to our presenters. Again, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you, Russ, and welcome everyone. Happy Monday evening, October the 5th. It's hard to believe that here we are in the first semester of your senior year if you're graduating this year, and also halfway through the start of a beautiful semester. So we hope everyone's doing well. My name is Joseph Miller. I serve as Vice President for Enrollment at LaGrange College, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Ms. Selena Magnuson, who serves as Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness and Student Success at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. So,
hello, good evening. We're so happy to have all of y'all with us tonight.
So for tonight's session, we want to unpack from A to Z, the cascade as the dominoes fall from your start of your college search all the way through to enrollment and registration at the college of your choice. So Selena and I have a presentation put together where we're going to take different segments of that journey and then unpack it for you and help you connect the dots between from the moment that you raise your hand and indicate that you're interested in a college all the way to the point to where you are starting your first day of class at the college of your choice. And to do that, we want to walk through different segments of the college search and the admission and the enrollment process so that you know who your point of contacts are at any given point through the admission process, from your admission counselor to your financial aid counselor to the business office through orientation and pre-enrollment. We're going to take each section and unpack that for you so that you have a good understanding of how those processes work, how each of those divisions and those offices work together to help serve you as the student, and where you can reach out for additional information. So to get started, we're just going to start from the beginning, which would be where you are now at the beginning of your college search process. So whether you're a high school junior, senior, sophomore, maybe even a middle schooler, where do you begin? And admission usually begins as the applications for admission open up for high school seniors. So it's usually a good idea to wait to complete your application for admission until you've finished your junior year of high school as you're going into your senior year, which hopefully is the place where many of you all are at tonight, where you're in your senior year, you're starting to narrow down your list of colleges that you want to apply to and select visits. And so for most folks, you'll begin by submitting some sort of information request or an email to the admission office, or maybe even a campus visit. So where one of the best places to begin is to ask for information about the colleges of your choice. You can begin by submitting an information request that you may find on those colleges' websites. You may even go ahead and schedule a campus tour to start getting information. Also, once you've engaged with the admission office at the college of your choice, they're probably going to go ahead and encourage you to submit your application for admission. And now is a great time to do that. And I think the recommendation is for many students and many colleges is they want you to go ahead and submit your application for admission before the Thanksgiving holiday so that you can have some of the best consideration for offers of admission that exist out there. And you may encounter different types of admission to colleges. Some colleges offer admission on a rolling basis, which means that once the application process has begun and the review of those applications begins, they just continue reviewing applicants on a regular basis until they've made their class, which sometimes goes into the summer months. There's also colleges that offer different types of admission called regular decision, which means that once their admission process begins, then students can begin receiving offers of admission and also information about scholarships all throughout the application process. And then there's two other types of admission as well, which are called early decision and early action, which means that there's a special early decision period for applicants to apply, usually before December 1st or sometimes December 15th, where applicants can apply and start getting notifications of their admission before their regular candidates start getting notified of admission to the college. So regardless if you're applying to a college that has rolling admission, regular decision, early decision, or early action, you've got lots of different choices in how you want to engage and how you want to begin that admission process. But all of those begin by you reaching out to the colleges of your choice and requesting information. Now, Selena is representing Georgia Northwestern Technical College, and I represent LaGrange College. And so every college has a bit different requirements of what type of application materials you need to submit. This year, because of COVID-19, obviously, that's presented a lot of different disruptions and interruptions. And I'll ask Selena to maybe give some perspective from where she sees things. But I know many colleges this year have already suspended the requirements for standardized test scores. So that's another thing that you'll want to make sure that you speak to your colleges about. For example, at LaGrange College, under a normal year, we'd request students to submit their high school transcripts and their ACT or SAT scores. However, this year, because of some of the interruptions and the disruptions with COVID-19 with ACT and SAT testing, we are not requiring students to submit those test scores for this year. Selena, you may want to speak to your experience.
Yeah, we're in a similar situation. We've waived testing. If a student does have any of the measures, such as previously an SAT or an ACT score, we can utilize those. But if they do not have them, which in many cases they do not, we waive that requirement, and we will go ahead and accept the student.
So again, each college may have different requirements, or they may have positioned themselves differently in how they're addressing the lack of test scores this year. But just make sure that as you engage in conversations with the colleges of your choice, as you're starting to submit those applications and understanding what documents you need to provide, if colleges are requiring you, in addition to the high school transcript, to submit whatever test scores you have available, sometimes colleges will also ask you to submit a writing sample or even letters of recommendation from individuals who can talk about you as what kind of a student you are, maybe provide a character reference. So as you're going throughout the admission process, you're always going to begin with the Office of Admission at those individual colleges, both to schedule campus visits, to request additional information, and of course, to apply for admission. Another thing that's a great feature this time of the year is, since you're beginning early, a lot of colleges will waive their application fees at this time of the year. Some colleges have even made declarations that they're going to waive their application fees for the entire admission cycle, which is great, because if you're considering the cost of higher education and you want to explore different options, and maybe when you start adding up lots of different application fees, it may become cost prohibitive. But in an effort to serve as many students as possible, many colleges are generously waiving those application fees. So that's another question you may want to ask with the admission offices at the colleges of your choice. And finally, before we transition to financial aid, let's talk about campus visits. One of the most exciting things that you can do as a college or as a prospective college student is to physically get on a college campus and check out the culture and the climate and the physical space. But again, because of some disruptions with COVID-19, some colleges have suspended campus tours and are offering great options for virtual campus visits, or they're limiting the amount of campus visits that they have during the day. And so, Selena, at your institution, how are you guys addressing campus visits?
Well, right now, due to limited lab space in a lot of our classrooms, we are limiting those, and we are trying to do most of them virtually. And we have a really good software and a good virtual tour already in place, so that we can talk to the students through a Zoom meeting or a WebEx, and we can walk them right through wherever they want to see on the campus of their choice.
That's great. And so just like our presentation tonight, that's offered to you virtually so that you can dial in and chime in from any location, those virtual campus visits are great opportunities to engage with your admission counselor, maybe even talk to a faculty member or an athletic coach, and really get a good sense, without physically being on campus, but getting a great sense for what the campus culture and climate is like, and again, what those physical spaces look like on campus. So without physically being on campus, it's a great alternative to physically go in there. Plus, it saves you on travel. You can tour lots of different college campuses in a relatively short amount of time without also having to break the bank with lots of college visits and hotel stays and certainly wear and tear on your vehicle. So as you consider colleges of choice, and as you consider institutions to apply to and to visit to, One other part to the conversation, which begins right now, is the discussions about scholarship and financial aid. It's great because the federal rules changed on when students can begin working on financial aid and filling out their FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. A couple of years ago, students had to wait until after the 1st of January to begin working on their FAFSA from the information that they submitted on their income tax returns. But just recently, the FAFSA opened up on October the 1st. And so again, this year, you could have begun working on the FAFSA starting October 1 this year. So that means that the admission process and the financial aid process actually go hand in hand together. And so if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen and switch gears to talk about the next step in the admission and enrollment process, which is financial aid. Give me just a moment. All right, hopefully you all can see that.
I cannot see it. I'm not sure if I should be able to.
Yeah, it's not there right now.
Okay, no worries.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Sorry for the disruption. So I'd mentioned earlier that I'm representing LaGrange College, but I'm also representing a larger organization called the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. And we're the group of individuals that include financial aid counselors, directors of financial aid, assistant directors of financial aid at colleges and universities across the country to help students and families navigate through the financial aid process. So let's talk about financial aid. That's your next step in your journey as you go through the enrollment process. So first is admission. Second is financial aid. Some people think that you have to wait until you're admitted to begin work on your FAFSA, but that's not exactly the case. Again, since the FAFSA opened up on October the 1st, you can go ahead and start working on the federal application for federal student aid right now, while you're also applying for admission to colleges of your choice. But first, what is financial aid? A lot of people think that scholarships are the only type of financial aid out there, but actually financial aid consists of funds provided to students and families to help pay for post-secondary educational expenses. And some of those examples include loans for sure, scholarships, grants, work study and employment, and all of this works together to create your financial aid package at the college of your choice. So just because you think that financial aid may include loans, financial aid actually includes a lot of things. So anything that's not coming directly from your bank account, your pocketbook, or your wallet, any sort of additional funding that you get is considered financial aid. So again, loans, scholarships, grants, and work study or employment. There's also different sources of financial aid. So where is the financial aid? Where's the money coming from? And we're going to talk about two particular types of sources. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the federal government and states. Since we are part of the Georgia Probe College Fair, obviously the funding through the Georgia Student Finance Commission, including the Hope Scholarship, Zell Miller, tuition equalization grant, student access loans, those are all part of the state programs that are offered to you as a Georgia resident. But there's also different sources of financial aid, including colleges and universities. So think about your academic scholarship or an athletic scholarship, even an institutional grant. That's financial aid that comes directly from the college or university. There's also private sources, so outside scholarships, private scholarships. But also employers are a great source of financial aid. Maybe your mom or dad have tuition courtesy benefits through their employer that they can apply towards you to help pay for your college expenses. So first, let's talk about the federal government. The federal government is the largest source of financial aid. The federal government awards aid primarily based on financial need. And to qualify, you must apply each year using the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. And of course, you must meet the eligibility requirements in order to be eligible for financial aid. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the FAFSA became available starting October the 1st. And so every year as you apply for the FAFSA, you can apply starting October 1st. And for this upcoming year, for the 21-22 academic year, the FAFSA began being available on October the 1st, just 5 days ago. So the FAFSA is live and ready for you to go into. Also keep in mind that some colleges may set priority deadlines for the FAFSA. So just because the FAFSA is available, and it's available all the way through the end of the year, don't assume that you can wait to the last minute, because sometimes some of that great financial aid that's limited may may be unavailable if you apply later. So certainly applying earlier is better. When you use the FAFSA, you're gonna apply using the income tax information that you filed for the year for for the 2019 year. So for the taxes that your parents have already filed, you'll use that information to complete your FAFSA. To begin, and this is something you can actually start doing tonight, the first step in the process is to complete something called a Federal Student Aid ID. And to go there, you want to go to the website at studentaid.gov. So again, that's www.studentaid.gov. That is the official website for you to begin working on your FAFSA. Your Federal Student Aid ID is going to be your username and your password that you set up to begin working on your FAFSA. It's used for the FAFSA completion and allows you access to certain U.S. Department of Education websites. It can be used by students and parents throughout the financial aid process, including years following. So you'll use your Federal Student Aid ID every year that you complete the FAFSA. And it's also important to know that only the owner should create the Federal Student Aid ID. But just keep in mind that for any person's information that's going on the FAFSA that you complete, each of you want to complete your own Federal Student Aid ID. So student, you'll have your Federal Student Aid ID. And if your mom and dad's information is going on your FAFSA, you'll want each mom and dad, or if you're a single parent, just have one parent do the Federal Student Aid ID. But just know that the student will have their Federal Student Aid ID, and each parent will have their own Federal Student Aid ID. And again, this process takes about 5 minutes to set up. And again, this is something that you can do tonight. Just go to www.studentaid.gov. That'll take you to the Federal Student Aid ID. Once you've completed your Federal Student Aid ID, you can start working on your FAFSA on the web, also at studentaid.gov. And to begin, it'll ask you to log in using your Federal Student Aid ID. And then from there, you can begin working on your FAFSA, which takes about 45 minutes to an hour to complete online. It'll ask you information ranging from your personal student information. It'll ask you to submit federal income tax information from the taxes that you've already filed. And it'll ask you information about the colleges that you want your information sent to so that they can use that information to put together a scholarship offer. You can also download the Federal Student Aid mobile app. So it's this feature is really helpful so that you can save, submit, review your FAFSA settings online. So if you'd like a version of the Federal Student Aid FAFSA on the web on your phone, just go to My Student Aid mobile app. You can find it in the App Store. Shifting gears now, we've talked about the FAFSA and Federal Student Aid. Let's talk about aid that you can receive through the state of Georgia. So for state aid, obviously residency requirements apply. You want to make sure that you're a Georgia resident. Also, aid is awarded on the basis of both merit and need. A lot of times for the HOPE scholarship, imagine, take into consideration that there's a GPA requirement. Also, the state uses information that's sometimes provided on the FAFSA, and definitely deadlines vary. So you want to make sure that you're submitting your Georgia HOPE information on the Georgia Futures website before the deadline. And to go there, just go to gafutures.org, georgiafutures.org, and many of you all may have set up your Georgia Futures profile through your high school guidance counselor's office. But if you just go to gafutures.org and follow the information to sign in and create an account, and to make sure that you have started to apply for your eligibility for state aid through the Georgia Futures website. And so with that, as you go through the admission and financial aid process, again, both of those things will start happening simultaneously. And again, the National Association for Student Financial Aid Administrators is made up of financial aid officers, financial aid counselors at colleges all across the nation. The NASFA is the second largest intercollegiate organization, second only to the NCAA. So at every college, just about, that has a financial aid office, there's an individual who's a member of the National Association for Student Financial Aid Administrators who's available to meet with you and answer your questions and work with you and your families as you consider how to fund the cost of the education at the college of your choice. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to presentation mode, if that's okay. And so as we cascade through the process from admission to financial aid, and as you work with the financial aid office to get your financial aid package, and you make that decision to pay your enrollment deposit. So after you've been admitted at the college of your choice and you've submitted your financial aid and you've gotten your financial aid package and you've landed on the college of your choice, the next step in the process to confirm your intention to enroll is to submit an enrollment deposit. And again, both the admission and the financial aid offices can help you with this process, because your enrollment deposit confirms your intention to enroll. It accepts your financial aid award, and that means that also your financial aid then gets applied to your student account, so that when you're ready to attend your orientation and begin registering for classes, that your name's on the list, that the college of your choice knows that you've declared your intent to be a new student at that college. And to transition to that topic, I'm going to hand it over to my friend Selena.
Yay! I want to talk a little bit about orientation. Let me see if I can share my presentation. Can you see? Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, all right, everything look good? All right. I'm going to talk to you. Orientation can be different at different institutions, but every institution has an orientation of some sort. Probably going to be face-to-face. There could be a virtual component to it, especially now during the disruptions we've experienced with COVID-19. I know a lot of ours have been virtual, or it could be a mixture of both. They can range from a couple hours in length to a full day, to, you know, maybe even over the weekend that you go and you actually stay at the institution and get a feel for really what campus life is like. A lot of times institutions they will have a separate orientation for the parents, because parents are helping you out a good bit as you transition into college life, and they've got lots of questions as well. Orientations can come from various departments at the college. Admissions could oversee orientation. The Office of Student Engagement could. Also student success. It could just be a various departments. But once you're accepted, you will be required to attend an orientation. Purpose of orientation is just to give you some basic information and all the resources that you need to succeed as a student during your first semester and or your first year. We want you to connect with the important departments, the departments that we're speaking about today. Like sometimes you maybe have only been dealing with them through email or phone or virtually, but you may get to meet some people face to face, so you can put a face with that department. So you'll know Joseph is the financial aid contact, not probably, but at LaGrange. Also organizations, any student organizations, clubs, intramurals, that's really important for students to get a feel for where they're going to fit in at the institution. So you want to learn about those during orientation. You'll also use it as an opportunity to connect with other incoming students, whether you're at a commuter college and you're in a group of everyone that's going into a particular program of study, so you can meet your incoming classmates, or you might be meeting your roommate, or you might be meeting, you know, the people that are going to be on your hall. So it's really important to attend orientation. One of the biggest purposes is also for your class selection. A lot of orientations, you are rolled into also picking your classes. And you want to know what those classes are going to be. So we're going to talk a little bit about registration. At some schools, your freshman classes are kind of laid out for you, and you kind of know where you're going just because you're a freshman. Freshmen sometimes don't get the pick of courses. They may get all the 8 o'clock sections of particular courses. They may have weird schedules, just depending on how registration works at the college that you pick. Another big part of orientation is going through like how our student information systems work on our college system, so that you'll know how to register online and you'll know how to pick those classes. Usually at orientation, we'll also go over educational planning and what's your path to graduation, just to kind of briefly help you map that out. Some schools do a really good job at that and they can show you where you're going to start and how you're going to end, so that you can kind of see that pathway. And there again, that's all handled through various software programs that you'll learn about typically in that orientation process. Also, dealing with registration, I wanted to talk briefly about the registrar's office and how that fits in. So once you register, then you're going to have a record. You're going to potentially have a record there with the registrar's office, and the registrar's office, they're in charge of maintaining student records. So at that point in time, you may have a need, if you haven't already had a need, to go visit that office, and that's an important office at the college. And various things can funnel through that office, and it can be different at different institutions. So it's kind of important to know when you need to see them. Just do a little bit of research, but these are kind of the overarching themes that occur in a registrar's office. So you sign up for a class during orientation, you go to class the first week and decide that you don't want that class. So you might need to drop a course, you might need to add a different course, and sometimes the registrar's office can help you with that if you have questions. You might get into your first semester and decide, maybe I need to make a change, and you might have to withdraw. We hope that that never occurs, and that, you seek out some advice before you do that. But definitely the registrar's office is a good department to start with. And I mentioned before, they oversee your student academic records. So as soon as you start college, you fall under the FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act. So that means your student records are held private, and you've got, you can ask to see your student records. You can ask to have them amended. You also can pick who can see your records. So if your parent, wants to have access to your record, you may have to sign a waiver for that. So if you want them to call and ask, that can just vary from institution to institution. So you want to know about that privacy record and that policy there on your college campus. Typically the registrar's office they're in charge of the degree audit, which that goes back to your pathway to graduation that I was speaking about earlier. So you might have questions from time to time. Hey, I took this course. It's not counting. It's supposed to be an elective. My roommate took it. It counted for her, but it's not counting for me. So you might have to go see the registrar's office or whoever's in charge of that on your campus, and they can help walk you through that. Software systems are great, but they do have glitches from time to time. So you may have some questions about that. Joseph, do you have anything to add from your standpoint on these various departments? Or I think mine's kind of short and brief, but.
You did a great job, Selena. I just tell you, I think one of the most thrilling parts of the whole enrollment process is that orientation piece that you were talking about earlier, because there's so much anticipation and buildup through the admission and financial aid process. It seems very nuts and bolts, but then once you're admitted, once you've paid your enrollment deposit, once you've got your financial aid package just the way you want it, you can officially say that you are a student once you complete the orientation process, once you are registered. And that sort of is a rite of passage that many students and parents look forward to, is, getting on campus or doing a virtual orientation, getting registered for classes. You got your class schedule in hand, and now you're ready to begin classes. I know many colleges actually have several orientation periods throughout the year based on when their start terms are. We always think sometimes of college being a fall only start date, because so much of the buildup to thinking about going to college happens in the fall semester. But lots of colleges equally have a really strong spring semester start date that's just as full as the fall. So that's another thing to ask the colleges of your choice, is that, you may be able to start in the spring. Sometimes they'll let you start in the summer, but they certainly have the traditional start date in the fall semester as well. And there's different orientation sessions that lead up to those as well. So,
and I know orientations around here it's exciting. You'll see the happiest students on that day, and then on graduation day. Those are my two favorite days. And yes, we are an institution. We have orientations for every term, and we have multiple times and sessions. We try to accommodate students the best that we can. But we're a little bit smaller of an institution, so we're able to do that. Your larger institutions may not be able to have, so many different days, but you just check with them to find out.
Yeah. So with this presentation, we hope you've learned a lot. We hope that you understand the flow, the cascade as the dominoes fall, so to speak, from the minute that you raise your hand and indicate that you're interested in a college. You can reach out to the admission office to get more information, schedule campus visits, begin the admission process and work with your admission counselor to get you admitted. At the same time or immediately afterwards, you can also begin the financial aid process. Submit your FAFSA online. For Georgia residents, you go to gafutures.org to work on your Hope Scholarship information. And then once you're admitted and have your financial aid package together and pay your enrollment deposit, then begins the pre-orientation and orientation process and class registration, all leading up to the exciting day that you begin taking classes as a student at the college of your choice. So, in respect of your time for this presentation, we wanted to take about 30 minutes to walk through that process with you, but also to make sure that we had left plenty of time in this presentation for about 10 minutes to see if you have any questions for us. And if so, we'd be glad to answer them for you.
While we're waiting on questions, I'll pop on and just remind everyone that to ask a question of our presenters, just click on the Q&A button and type your question into the box.
So we have a question that says, is the FAFSA mandatory? That's a great question. So the FAFSA is not mandatory. You can certainly apply to a college of your choice. You can actually get scholarships at colleges all without doing the FAFSA. But I would ask the question for the colleges that you're intending to apply to and just ask them, do they require a FAFSA? Some colleges will say that in order to receive any type of financial aid at the college, whether it's a scholarship or a grant, that you have to finish the FAFSA. But for the FAFSA is typically used to help discern if a student has any need that needs to be filled out with institutional aid or federal student aid. So certainly if you're interested in receiving loans or need-based grants, the FAFSA would be required for doing that. But for general scholarships or sometimes even academic or athletic scholarships, you don't necessarily have to do the FAFSA. But I would definitely ask the colleges that you're applying to see what their positions are on that. So I can speak to LaGrange College. LaGrange does not require students to do a FAFSA and could still receive academic scholarships from the college. But in order to fill in the rest of the piece to that, we do encourage students to do the FAFSA. And Selena, your experience maybe
we're the same way. We do not require it. If a student wants to receive a loan or a need-based aid, then of course they have to do the FAFSA. If they're applying for state aid, there's another application process for that they can do. And then of course we have a separate process for scholarships.
Great question. And thank you, Selena. It's good to hear from perspective from different colleges.
Very good. Everyone's quiet.
Selena, let me ask you a question, if that's okay, while we're waiting on any questions to come in. So on your campus, when you think about the offices we've talked about tonight, admissions, financial aid, registrar, how are those offices physically positioned on your campus? Are they all in the same building? Are they kind of close to each other? And how do those departments usually communicate with each other about a student?
Well, yes, and we have 6 campuses, so we have 6 campuses to staff, and they are all in the same building, all in the same area for the most part. A couple of our larger campuses, they may just be down the hall from one another, but we're blessed in that respect. So it makes it easy for students if they have to hop around, you know, that we can walk them to the next person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great benefit, especially having those offices next to each other. It really helps the communication about, you know, for a student who's going from admission to financial aid to the registrar's office, that not only can they physically go from office to office, but each of those offices are right next to each other. So they're working really together and coordinating and synchronizing their work.
Right.
And some colleges, just be aware, it may not be like that. You may have to go to 3 separate buildings for each of those functions.
And you may have to take a bus, you know, to a building. So yeah, some campuses can be different.
That's right. Especially those bigger campuses. That's right. You're not just in the same building or even next to each other. You may be a block or 2 away from each other. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, now we did get another question regarding the FAFSA and income taxes. The question is, you mentioned income tax for the FAFSA. I don't entirely know what that is. Would we do them? So if once you have completed your income taxes for the 2019 year, unless you filed an extension, that's what you'll use when you complete the FAFSA for the upcoming year. So you don't have to wait until the 2020 taxes are done. You can use the taxes that you've already filed in 2019. If you're not quite sure, I would encourage you to speak to either your high school guidance counselor or even a tax professional if you need to get more information about the income taxes that you filed, because the FAFSA does require that income information on the parents, either from a tax income or from other documentation that you have available to you to help understand what is the discretionary income in a family to help send one member of a family to college for 1 year. So if you have questions about that, your financial aid office at the colleges that you're applying to can also help with that, but certainly reach out to your high school guidance counselor, or maybe if you filed your taxes through a tax professional, they can give you some guidance on that as well.
Mm-hmm. And you may not be filing taxes per se, but your parents might be. So,
yeah.
You know, I'm not sure. I knew that when I was in high school.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. That's exactly right. Thanks for
it happens kind of behind the scenes at home.
Yeah, that's one thing to know about the FAFSA. You know, the FAFSA is the student's application. However, it asks a lot of information that your parents are going to need to provide, especially that income information. So thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, the tax information is from the parents. And if you're a dependent on your parents, then they'll need to be the ones to provide that information from the taxes that they filed. Well, it looks like we still have time for a few more questions. Just let me ask a question to the group that may be watching. How many folks have already started working on your FAFSA for this upcoming year? So if you're a senior graduating in 21, how many folks have already started working on your FAFSA, or maybe at least completed your FSA ID? Because I'll tell you this, if you haven't, your federal student aid ID is something you can do tonight. As soon as you sign off from this presentation, it'll take you 5 minutes. Go to studentaid.gov, sign up for your federal student aid ID. If you've got mom or dad sitting there with you, go ahead and have them do it too, because that'll be the first step in working on your FAFSA. It doesn't commit you to anything, but it'll open it up to where you have a password, a username and a password to where you can log in and start working on your FAFSA.
You made it look so easy. I want to go do it now.
It'll be one of the easiest things you do in the whole admission and enrollment process. It takes you 5 minutes. Super easy. All right, Selena, Russ, any other questions you see coming through?
I don't see any.
I do not see any as well.
Well,
we'll wait
everyone,
a couple more minutes if you'd like to see if there's anybody else who has a question, and we've got about 3 minutes, so. Or if we're pretty sure that no one, if a question would have come, it would have come before now. It's okay to wrap up if you'd like.
Well, I was just going to say, if you have questions about anything, even if it's not something that we covered, you know, you feel free to ask. We're here. Got a couple more minutes.
Yeah. And also too, as we're waiting on questions, maybe we could start providing some closing comments. So I think one of the most important takeaways from this presentation tonight is to understand that your admission and enrollment process is absolutely facilitated by people just like us who love what we do, and we love serving students, and we love serving families, and we love our institutions, and we love to get opportunities to talk to students and parents and answer questions. And so one thing I would encourage you to do is at any point through your admission and enrollment process, don't hesitate one bit to send an email or reach out for a phone call to your admission counselor in the admission process, to a financial aid counselor in the financial aid process, and certainly folks in the registrar's office, especially to help confirm things like that you've received your transcripts and that you've got everything in place to begin that really exciting orientation process. Because behind the process are a lot of good people who want to come alongside you and work with you and serve you to help make sure that your transition into college is smooth and seamless, and that you're taking care of it every step of the phase, from admission to financial aid to orientation and priority registration, to get you ready for your first day of class. So don't hesitate to reach out. We love to talk to people.
Yeah, I agree. If emails are coming in and the phones are ringing, I don't care what the questions are. You know, that just lets us know that you're out there and you're engaged and we want to help you. So as little as the question may be, feel free to reach out anytime.
Happy to. Yep. And I know too, because, you know, gosh, it goes without saying, COVID-19 has created an environment that is unlike anything we've ever experienced. And, you know, especially for those of us who love to have open campus visits and office visits, that's made it a little bit challenging. So the emails and the phone calls really are the best way to reach us at this time of the year. Some colleges have started reopening in limited numbers for campus visits and office visits. So certainly too, reach out to the colleges that you've applied to see if they're scheduling office visits for you to come in and physically meet with a financial aid counselor or an admission officer or someone in the registrar's office. But if you can't, or if you don't know, don't hesitate to reach out and pick up the phone and call, and certainly to email. Some campuses, I believe, may be working in virtual settings as well. Some campuses may be half virtual, half on-campus staffed, but either way, there's going to be somebody that you can contact during the business hours of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, who can answer a question for you.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I agree.
Well, we're pretty much at time right now. Is there anything you guys would like to add before I come in and wrap up, or have you covered pretty much everything?
I think we've covered everything. We look forward to seeing you guys on campus. Any campus.
Good luck on your college search. We hope it's the most memorable year of your life, and I hope you have a lot of fun. So thank you all. Thank you, Selena. Thank you, Russ. And thank you, everyone who chimed in for this evening.
Thanks.
And thank you for presenting tonight. Thank you for joining us for this session. When you close this window, there'll be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this is just one of many sessions being hosted. Be sure to sign up for additional ones where you signed up for this one. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the other session recordings. Again, the same website you signed up for this session. Again, thank you to Selena and Joseph for presenting tonight, and have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye now.